he said. "You understand the consequences. Vote with clarity. No persuasion, no warning, just procedure." One by one, the prisoners stepped forward. Some held their papers steady. Others trembled. When Lucas dropped his folded vote into the glass box, he felt something heavier than fear. He felt ownership. Whatever happened next would not be forced upon them. It would be chosen. After the final ballot fell, the boxes were carried into the administrative cabin. Guards remained outside. The prisoners were dismissed to their cabins to wait. Waiting was worse than captivity, because captivity removes uncertainty. Choice multiplies it. Inside the cabin, 3 American officers sat at a long wooden table: Colonel Harris, Captain Reed, and a civilian observer from Washington. The accountability box was opened first. Slips were unfolded, names recorded, tallies marked carefully. No commentary, no reaction. When the last slip was counted, the civilian observer looked up slowly. Harris gave a single nod. Then the referendum box was opened. 31 votes, folded identically, unmarked except for a single word, yes or no. They counted once, then again, then a third time. When it was finished, Harris closed his eyes briefly, not in relief, in confirmation. Outside, snow began falling again, soft, almost gentle. Lucas sat on his bunk staring at his hands when a knock came at the cabin door. "Assembly," a guard said simply, no emotion in his voice. The men gathered in the square. The ballot boxes sat on a wooden table, empty now. Colonel Harris stepped forward. "The referendum result," he began evenly, "is 17 in favor, 14 opposed." A ripple of breath passed through the crowd. Majority, yes. Integration would begin. Otto's face remained expressionless. Lucas felt both triumph and dread. But Harris raised his hand again. "The accountability vote has also been tallied." The temperature seemed to drop. 3 names received more than 50% of the accountability ballots. A stunned silence. 3? Harris unfolded a paper. "The following prisoners will remain in camp under standard conditions until further review." He read the first name, Dieter. A visible flinch moved through the group. The second name, Otto Kruger. A sharp intake of breath. And then, Lucas Weber. The world went quiet. Lucas didn't react at first. He thought he had misheard. But the faces around him told him otherwise. Otto looked almost satisfied. Dieter looked devastated. And Lucas felt something crack inside his chest. He had voted yes. He had supported integration. And yet the majority had decided he was not ready for freedom. Murmurs erupted. "This is unfair." "On what grounds?" "You said responsibility." Harris remained calm. "The majority has spoken." Otto stepped forward. "So that's it? They abandon us?" "No," Harris said. "They evaluate you." "Evaluate?" Lucas repeated hollowly. Harris's gaze met his. "You received 19 accountability votes." 19. More than half. More than enough. Lucas suddenly understood the anonymous note in his cabin. "You are naive." They didn't distrust his loyalty. They distrusted his optimism. The other 14 yes voters stood frozen. Integration had been approved. But 3 of their own would remain behind. And they had chosen it. No American had intervened. No guard had influenced. The decision belonged entirely to the prisoners. And now they had to live with it. That evening, the camp felt fractured. 14 men would begin the conditional civilian integration program within days. 17 would remain, either by choice or by accountability ruling. Otto sat across from Lucas inside the dim cabin. "You see," Otto said quietly, "your precious majority." Lucas didn't respond. Dieter stared at his bandaged fingers. "I thought waving at that child meant something," he whispered. "It did," Lucas said softly. "Not enough," Dieter replied. The next morning, something changed again. A notice appeared on the board. Phase 1, Integration. Beginning 48 hours. Below it, a list of 14 names. Lucas's name was not there. Otto's name was not there. Dieter's name was not there. But beneath the list was a second announcement. Additional disclosure meeting, mandatory for all prisoners. Time, 1900 hours. Location, Assembly Hall. No explanation. That night, the men filled the hall. Colonel Harris stood at the front, holding the unmarked envelope that had rested beneath his 2 reports. He looked older than usual. 12 months ago, he began, this camp was selected for an experimental program authorized by the War Department. The room stiffened. Experimental. Harris continued. The objective was not interrogation, not punishment. He paused. It was measurement. Measurement of what? The question we were tasked with answering, Harris said quietly, was whether ideological commitment survives when hostility is removed. The words hung heavy in the air. This valley, he continued, was designed to eliminate coercion. No brutality, no deprivation, only choice. Otto's face hardened. So we were laboratory animals. You were participants, Harris replied. In what? Lucas asked. Harris opened the envelope. Inside was a typed document. The final phase. He looked directly at the group. Tomorrow, the 14 integration-approved prisoners will be transported to town. A murmur rose. But they will not be supervised. Silence. No guards, Harris clarified. No escorts, no tracking. Shock rippled through the hall. If they commit crimes, someone asked, they will be prosecuted under civilian law. If they run, they are free to attempt it. Otto's laugh was sharp. And us? Harris's expression didn't change. The remaining 17 prisoners will vote again in 30 days. For what? Lucas demanded. Harris met his eyes. For whether this camp continues to exist at all. The room froze. If the majority votes to dissolve the camp, Harris said, all remaining prisoners will be released unconditionally. No integration program, no supervision, no valley. Just open America, or open wilderness. No more structures, no more experiments, no more protection. Complete freedom. The weight of it crushed the air from the room. The first vote had been about integration. The second would be about dismantling the system entirely. And now Lucas understood something terrifying. The accountability vote hadn't just excluded 3 men. It had ensured that the camp retained its most divided voices. Because if all the yes voters had left, the next vote would have been predictable. But now it would be chaos. As the meeting ended, snow hammered the roof of the hall. Otto turned to Lucas. They're not testing loyalty, he said quietly. They're testing what? Otto looked toward the mountains. What we do when no one controls us anymore. Outside, the 14 selected prisoners began packing quietly. Inside the valley, 17 men realized something chilling. The next vote wouldn't be about leaving the camp. It would be about whether they believed humanity needed fences at all. And this time, there would be no accountability box to hide behind. The morning the 14 men left, no one lined up to watch. Not because they didn't care, because they did. Too much. At 600 hours, a single military truck rolled into the square. No rifles were raised. No chains clinked. Each of the 14 men carried one suitcase, issued by the camp, filled with civilian clothes, work documents, and the wages they had accumulated. Colonel Harris stood beside the truck. "No escort will accompany you beyond town limits," he said calmly. "You have addresses, you have contracts. You have identification papers marking you as paroled prisoners of war." A pause. "You also have a choice." No one asked what he meant. They already knew. The truck would take them to the outskirts of Helena. After that, no supervision, no tracking, no guards hiding in alleys. Freedom with consequences. Lucas stood beside Otto and Dieter as the 14 climbed into the truck. One of them, a quiet farm boy named Emil, hesitated before stepping up. He looked back at the cabins, at the mountains, at the men he was leaving behind. And then he got in. The truck drove away in a cloud of pale dust. The sound faded quickly. 17 men remained in the valley, and for the first time since their arrival in Montana, the camp felt smaller. At 0800 hours, something unprecedented happened. The guards removed their rifles, not just lowered them, removed them entirely. Weapons were locked inside the administrative cabin. Then, one by one, the guards walked beyond the wooden perimeter fence. They didn't leave the valley, but they stood outside the boundary, watching from a distance. Colonel Harris addressed the remaining prisoners. "Until the next referendum, there will be no armed presence inside the fence." No one spoke. "No curfew," Harris added. "No roll call." A murmur rippled through the group. "The kitchen remains stocked. The supply shed remains unlocked. You are responsible for maintaining the camp." Otto's eyes narrowed. "And if we burn it down?" Harris held his gaze. "Then you burn down your own shelter." With that, the colonel stepped beyond the fence as well. 17 prisoners stood alone inside a fully supplied, fully functional camp. No guns, no guards, no locked gates, just mountains and choice. For the first hour, nothing happened. Men stood in clusters, unsure whether to test the boundaries. Dieter walked slowly to the gate. It was unlatched. He pushed it open. No alarm sounded. No one shouted. He stepped 1 foot beyond the fence line. Waited. Nothing. He stepped back inside. The experiment had entered a new phase. By afternoon, subtle fractures appeared. 2 men began arguing over food distribution. "We should ration," one insisted. "We don't know how long this lasts." Another laughed bitterly. "You think they'll let us starve?" Otto intervened quickly. "Act like this is permanent," he said. "Because it might be." Meanwhile, Lucas walked through the cabins. Beds neatly made, stoves warm, everything still functioning. The Americans hadn't removed a single comfort. They had only removed authority. And that changed everything. On the second day without guards, someone took extra wages from the supply office. No one saw who, but the envelope count didn't match. Suspicion spread instantly. "You see?" Otto said sharply. "This is what happens." "It was one person," Lucas replied. "It was the beginning," Otto corrected. That night, for the first time, cabin doors were locked from the inside. Not by Americans, by prisoners. On the third day, news arrived from town. Not by messenger, by sight. In the far distance, near the valley entrance, Lucas spotted 2 of the 14 integration men walking freely beside townspeople, laughing, carrying lumber. No guards, no chains, just working. Dieter saw them too. "They didn't run," he whispered. Otto remained silent, because that complicated the narrative. By the end of the first week, something unexpected happened. The camp grew cleaner, more organized. Work schedules were posted voluntarily. Food was rationed carefully. The missing wages were quietly replaced, an anonymous envelope left in the office overnight. No one confessed, but someone corrected it. And that mattered. On the 10th day, a storm rolled into the valley. Violent winds, blinding snow. One of the storage roofs tore loose. Without orders, the 17 men worked together through the night to secure it. Frozen hands, shouting over wind. When it was done, they stood breathless in the snow. No guard had told them to fix it. No punishment had threatened them. They fixed it because it was theirs. The next morning, something changed again. Colonel Harris re-entered the fence alone, unarmed. He looked around slowly. The camp was intact, cleaner than before, structured, functioning. He nodded once. 30 days from the first referendum, he said, you will vote again. 17 men stood in silence. The question, Harris continued, will be this. He let the wind carry the pause. Should this camp be dissolved entirely? If the majority voted yes, every remaining prisoner would be released immediately. No integration contracts, no town preparation, no supervision. Just freedom, raw and unfiltered. If they voted no, the camp would remain, with its comforts, its structure, its safety. The ultimate choice, security or uncertainty. That night, Lucas sat alone outside his cabin. The mountains no longer looked like barriers. They looked like thresholds. Otto joined him quietly. They want us to prove something, Otto said. No, Lucas replied. They want to see what we choose when comfort is optional. Otto stared into the darkness. And what will you choose? Lucas didn't answer. Because for the first time he wasn't sure. In war, survival was simple. In captivity, resistance was simple. But here the question was terrifyingly modern. If you are given safety, dignity, and freedom, do you dismantle the system that gave it to you? Or do you preserve it? And somewhere beyond the valley, the 14 men in town were living proof that the world outside was real. Working, laughing, choosing. The next vote would not just end the experiment. It would reveal whether the 17 men inside the fence believed they needed fences at all. And deep down, each of them feared the same thing. Not that they would lose freedom, but that they would discover they preferred structure. 30 days passed without a single order. No punishments, no rewards, no speeches. The 17 remaining prisoners ran the camp better than it had ever been run, which made the final question unbearable. If it works, why destroy it? The second referendum day arrived under a clear Montana sky. No snow, no wind. The mountains stood sharp and exposed, like witnesses. This time there was only one ballot box. Solid wood. No transparency. No accountability slips. Just a single question written above it. Should the camp be dissolved immediately? Yes. Complete release, no. Camp remains operational. Colonel Harris stood outside the fence. Not inside. Outside. Unarmed. Waiting. 17 men formed a line. Dieter went first. He didn't hesitate. His vote dropped into the box with a hollow wooden sound. Otto went third. His face gave nothing away. When it was Lucas's turn, he paused longer than he expected. He looked at the cabins, the repaired roof, the woodpiles stacked neatly. The kitchen garden they had started themselves. This place had become proof of something, that they could function without cruelty, without force, without ideology. But it was still a cage, even if the door was open. Lucas folded his paper and let it fall. Counting happened immediately. Inside the administrative cabin. No delays, no suspenseful waiting period. Just arithmetic. 17 slips unfolded one by one. Outside, the men stood silently. No one spoke. No one speculated. Because deep down, each of them knew. This vote wasn't about America. It wasn't about Germany. It wasn't about war. It was about fear. Fear of chaos. Fear of responsibility. Fear of unlimited freedom. The door opened. Colonel Harris stepped back inside the fence for the final time. He carried a single sheet of paper. His expression was unreadable. "The result," he said calmly, "is 9 votes, yes." A pause. 8 votes, no. A breath moved through the group. 9. Just enough. The camp would be dissolved. No cheers followed. No celebration. Just silence. Because the comfort was over. Harris nodded once. "As of this moment, the experiment concludes." Experiment. He said it openly now. "The supply stores are yours to divide. The cabins are no longer property of the United States Army. The perimeter fence will be dismantled today." A soldier laughed nervously. "You're just leaving?" "Yes." "No escorts?" "No." "No paperwork?" Harris looked at them carefully. "You have already proven what we needed to measure." Otto stepped forward. "And what was that?" Harris held his gaze. "That men who are treated as responsible will eventually act responsibly." A beat of silence. "But also," Harris added quietly, "that freedom chosen by majority feels heavier than freedom granted by authority." By afternoon, the guards loaded their rifles into trucks. They did not reclaim the cabins. They did not inventory the supplies. They simply drove away. The sound of engines faded down the valley road. 17 former prisoners stood alone in a fully stocked mountain settlement. No one was watching anymore. At least not visibly. The fence came down before sunset. Not ripped apart in anger. Carefully dismantled. Wood stacked neatly beside the cabins. Dieter removed the final post. He stood there holding it, staring at the open space where the boundary had been. "It looks smaller without it," he murmured. Lucas nodded. "It always was." Night fell differently without guards. Not tense, not uncertain. Just open. Otto approached Lucas near the former gate. "You voted yes," Otto said. "Yes, I voted no." "I know." Otto exhaled slowly. "I wasn't afraid of America," he admitted. "I was afraid we'd lose what we built here." Lucas looked at the valley. "We didn't build a prison," he said. "We built proof." "Proof of what?" "That control isn't required for order." Otto considered that. "And now?" "Now we see if we were right." In the following weeks, something remarkable happened. No mass escape into the wilderness, no chaotic looting. Some men left immediately for town, joining the 14 who had integrated earlier. Some stayed behind temporarily, turning the former camp into a cooperative lumber operation. No American officers returned. No soldiers reclaimed the land. The valley near Helena slowly transformed, not into a prison, but into a settlement founded by former enemies. Years later, locals would refer to it simply as the Valley. Few spoke of what it had been. Fewer understood what it had tested. And the strangest part? There was never official documentation released to the public. No grand announcement. No headlines. Just a quiet report filed somewhere in Washington concluding, subject group demonstrated sustained self-governance following removal of coercive oversight. History remembers battles. It remembers generals. It remembers victories. But it rarely remembers experiments in dignity. On his final evening in the valley, before leaving for town, Lucas stood where the ballot boxes once sat. He imagined the first vote, 17-14. He imagined the accountability slips with his name written 19 times. He imagined the final count, 9-8. One vote, one decision, one fragile majority separating structure from uncertainty. And he realized something that would stay with him long after the war ended. The most powerful prison is not the one built with barbed wire. It is the one built with comfort. And the most terrifying freedom is the one you vote for yourself. If this story unsettled you, that was the point. Because somewhere between security and liberty, between structure and chaos, every society eventually faces the same question those 17 men faced in the mountains of Montana. If the fence disappears tomorrow, will you know how to live without it?